Hi, I'm Old Norse specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. I teach at the University of Colorado Boulder, previously at UC Berkeley and UCLA. One of the most intriguing questions that Norse mythology leaves unanswered for us is the origin of the god Heimdallr, usually in translations written as Heimdall without that final R, which is just a marker of subject case in Old Norse. Heimdallr is not clearly one of the Aesir or the Vanir. In fact, in the one stanza in the Poetic Edda that could tell us which one he is called both. This is a stanza in Thrimskvida, where he is suggesting that Thor put on the wedding dress, and we hear that Heimdallr is both Hvítastur Osa, whitest of the Aesir, and that he knows the future like other Vanir, sem Vanir Adrir. Now, when it says he knows the future like other Vanir, han vissi vel fram, so he knows well forward, seems to imply knowing the future. It's, I think, the easiest way to read that. Notice that there is alliteration there, so vissi vel Vanir. But of course, every time that the word Vanir occurs in the Poetic Edda, it's occurring in alliteration. So that doesn't necessarily tell us that he isn't Vanir, or that he is. And since any god can be called one of the Aesir, him being called the whitest of the Aesir doesn't necessarily mean that he's Aesir either. And by the way, the term white, hvítur, isn't used to describe Caucasian skin color in contrast with other skin colors. In women, it typically means they're very attractive, the implication seeming to be women that don't work outside, so they're not sunburned or suntanned. They're high-status women who get to stay inside. It can also mean blonde hair, because very blonde hair is called white in Old Norse. In men, it can have it can sort of imply attractiveness, especially like a very attractive blonde man. It can imply old age, although usually the term hor is used for that. It can also imply cowardliness, which I don't think is what's happening with Heimdallr, but you know, could be. So I guess my typical reading of that is that he's the handsomest, but I'm not completely committed to that either. Anyway, so where does he come from? Well, he says himself in a poem called Heimdallr, which we know 2 lines from because Snorri cites them in the Prose Edda. He says, Niu em ek mithra mogur, niu em ek sistra sonur. I am son of 9 mothers, I am son of 9 sisters. We read something similar in Völuspá and Skama, the short Völuspá 35, as I number it in my translation. Varð ein borin í ordaga, ram aukin mjok rogna kindir. Niu boru than nad govgan man, jotna mojar vid jarðar throm. So one was born in early days, a very strength-increased child of gods. 9 women, young women of giants, mojar jotna, bore that shield glorious, or perhaps spear glorious man at the edge of the earth, vid jarðar throm. So his 9 mothers are giant women, clearly mojar jotna. All right, and then Völuspá and Skama in the next stanza goes on to tell us the names of these women. The only one that seems to mean much in terms of the broader context of mythology is Jorn Saxa, who is the mother of, I think it's Magni, one of Thor's sons. So she also has sexual relations with Thor. But what I've wondered is, in Völuspá 2, when the Volva says, Niu man ek heima, niu ivithjor, she's talking about the earliest things she remembers. She says, I remember 9 worlds or realms, Heima, but also 9. Then this Ivithjor has usually been interpreted as giant women. The Codex Regius actually says Ivithi. The reading Ivithjor comes from the Hauksbók manuscript and seems to be better. So are these the 9 mothers of Heimdallr? If these are the same 9 giant women, that would match with what Völuspá and Skama says about him being born in early days, í ordaga. So is Heimdallr somehow associated with the beginning of the world? Well, Heimdallr's name does not really give us any additional information, although it may offer a small clue. Heim in Heimdallr is pretty clearly to be related to the Old Norse root heim, meaning home. But this is also used, notice, as in that stanza from Völuspá stanza 2, to mean world or realm. So is he somehow associated with the worlds, world or worlds, realm or realms, and their structure? Well, the dollar part, unfortunately, is very difficult to understand. Dollar with one L is valley, dale, but with two L's, there's no common Norse word formed in that way. There's a later Icelandic dialectical word for a particular tree. I can't remember what tree that is dollar. I think dollar is also some kind of household item in some obscure Icelandic idiom. But it's not valley, to be clear, because it's consistently written as two L's, and the double L versus single L does make a phonemic difference in Old Norse. These cannot be the same word, and also the genitive of his name is Heimdallr, which is a little bit unusual. That is a I stem or U stem genitive singular, not your typical Heimdalls that you'd expect from an A stem. So this is some kind of obscure vocabulary term that I've just never seen satisfactorily explained. Maybe the closest thing to an explanation would be with Heim being world or realm and some kind of tree, but then his name seems like it should be the name of say, Yggdrasil. Of course, he is the guardian of the gods Heimr, that is Åsgardr, where he guards Bifrost, the bridge to Åsgardr from Midgardr. Snorri says he has extraordinary powers of sight and hearing that assist him in this business. He can see grass growing or hear wool growing on a sheep. And he will blow his Gjallar horn at the end of days to signal that Ragnarok is coming. So he is a powerful function as watchman, and also an old rivalry with Loki that is never quite fully understandable. Snorri quotes a skaldic stanza from Husdropa that implies that Loki and Heimdallr once fought in the form of seals over the Brisingamen, Freyja's necklace. We don't have that story, but I would love to have the story of these two fighting as seals. And at Ragnarok, Snorri says that Loki and Heimdallr will face off, just as Freyr faces off with Surtur, Odin with Fenrir, and Thor with Jormungandr. And in Lokasenna, when Loki is insulting the various gods, he insults Heimdallr and is one of the final gods that he insults, which may imply some kind of saving the worst for last deal. But he insults him in terms that are difficult to understand and have been best explained as Heimdallr has to stand with an erect back, and no one has fully understood why this is such an insult, except maybe to imply that he's a watchman, so he has to be standing up when the others are feasting or whatever they're doing. But Heimdallr's at the feast where Loki's insulting him in this way, so there may be some context or some details or something wrong with the manuscript that we're just missing. It is also notable that just like Loki, the name of Heimdallr occurs in no place names in Scandinavia. Now, I've mentioned this before, and people will come back at me and say, that's not true. I live in a place called Heimdall in Norway or something along those lines, Hjemdal, depending on where you're at. Okay, but like I said, that's not the same. There's no place that's just named Thor or named Odin, so there's not a place named Heimdallr, and when you have a place named Heimdall, that means home valley, right? That's that single L dollar valley or dale word. That's not his name. What we're talking about is why isn't there something like we have with Odin? We have Odinsve, the city of Odense in Denmark, Odin's sacred place. We have tons of places with Thor's name, right? Just to grab one at random in the Faroes, there's Tórshavn, Thorshoven, Thor's harbor. There's nothing like a Heimdallrhoven or a Heimdallrve. No place names contain what is unambiguously his name. In fact, I don't think any contain ambiguously his name. And that's very strange if he is so important, as he does seem to be. We don't have narratives that center on him exactly, but he's always sort of there at the margins. I mean, there is the one that does center on him when he goes under the name Rieger. He does father the three different human classes, which leads to, that's probably why in stanza 1 of Völuspá humans are addressed as the children of Heimdallr. So he is associated with creating us, which means he must be old enough to have to have been there when there were only 3 different couples of human beings. But where did he come from in the first place, right? There's 9 mothers. How do you have 9 mothers? I'm right back to the question from the beginning that I sort of glided over at the very beginning. How on earth does the 9 mothers thing work, right? Do they give birth to different parts of him and he's assembled later? Does each give birth to him in a different life? Is that the idea? Are they sequentially 9 mothers? Or what exactly is happening here? It's a great mystery. It's one of those things that you can just ponder forever without really coming up with an answer to, and we never get an answer, and we don't know who his father is either. But he must be very old. He must be associated somehow, I think, with the origin of the world in a myth that we've lost. Otherwise, he wouldn't be hinted at so much in the beginning of Völuspá, not only with humans being addressed as children of Heimdallr, but also with the mention of the new Ividur, the 9 giant women, who I do think are probably his moms. We've just lost this, whatever it was. Now, a personal speculation, and I'm often a little reluctant to get into these, but people seem to want me to. So here you go. Don't take this as I was going to say don't take it as gospel. I don't know. Don't take it as Edda. In this case, right? I think Heimdallr may be Ullr. Ullr has numerous places named after him, but he is barely mentioned in the Eddas, right? He comes up in Grímnismál twice because we hear about the homes of the different gods. We hear that Ullr's home is Idallir. We also hear that Heimdallr's home is Himinbjörg, heaven cliffs, heaven hills, which implies that the composer of Grímnismál doesn't think of them as the same. And Ullr is called on in making oaths. Odin says at the end of Grímnismál that the one who frees him from the fire will have the grace of Ullr, Ullar Huli. And there's a very obscure story in Saxo Grammaticus about a certain Ollerus taking over from Othinus during a period when Othinus was out. We really don't know who he was. He just must have been very important based on how many places are named after him. So I've wondered if Ullr, whose name is something like glory or wonder, I've wondered if that is an earlier name for Heimdallr. If the name Heimdallr comes to ascension fairly late in the Viking Age for the old figure of Ullr. Ullr is still distantly remembered in some kind of marginal functions as, for instance, a god to be called on in oaths. And so he becomes separate in people's minds, possibly in a similar way to how Froya and Frigg might have become separate after possibly initially being one figure. I've really wondered about that. It doesn't necessarily actually help us understand where Heimdallr comes from ultimately, because Ullr's origin isn't explained either. But it may offer us some hints at other answers. So these are my thoughts on Heimdallr for you today and on his origins, which are a wonderful mystery in the annals of the studies of Old Norse language and myth. If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, I hope that you'll check out one of the more than 250 other videos I have on this channel that discuss for free with a professional level of knowledge all different aspects of Norse language, culture, literature, and mythology. I make these videos for free, and I'm able to do so because of support from my wonderful community of Patreon backers, which I invite you to join. One of the best assets of Patreon membership is access to our Discord forum, which is a great discussion place for people of all levels of expertise who are interested in really seriously studying Norse language and myth. I also have translated the Poetic Edda and the Saga of the Volsungs, and in the near future my translations of the Saga of Hrolf Kraki with the Saga of Hervor and Haedrek, as well as the Prose Edda, will be available also from Hackett Publishing Company. And I've recently recorded the audiobook of my translation of the Poetic Edda, available in November 2018. For now, from beautiful Wyoming, I'm wishing you all the best.